you're going to add flavoring to it, when would you add it?
I would add it to the cream.
The cream along with the vanilla?
Yeah. Okay. I think when it comes to making the different flavors, what you would do is you just go ahead and add it right to the cream, just steep it in the cream. So what could we add? Well, if you want to add, let's say you want a coffee flavor, you could crush up some eggs and coffee beans, throw them in there and let them steep for 10 or 15 minutes and extract some flavor out. You just need to filter it out with something very, very fine mesh screen like a chinois. It would work very well. But we want to make sure it's not going to be, not going to leave a grit or any sort of sediment in our crème anglaise. So other things can be steeped in cream.
So if you were to use like extracts, mint, chocolate, how would you account for that? Would you take out some cream to add your extract? Or?
Depends on how much you're adding. If you're adding a lot, yes, I would replace the cream with it. So like pumpkin, for example. If I want to make a pumpkin crème anglaise, I would just take 4 ounces out, throw a pumpkin in. But with a tablespoon or a teaspoon or even extract, I'm not going to probably need to make any adjustments.
Yeah, so if you were, for instance, if you were like with the coffee extract that we got, and if you had some mint, and I don't know, would you go with pure chocolate, or would you go with like a cacao or something like that?
Well, crème de cacao, for example, is a very good flavor. But if you want really intense chocolate flavor, use straight chocolate. The key then is temperature. Every product's a little different. So I could put, let's say, I could get coffee beans and use those for extracting flavor, or injecting flavor into it. I can also put other things. I could put even things like fresh herbs in there if I really felt like it. But any flavor can be infused into the cream. Now, if you're going to use chocolate, this chocolate over here, for example, is still hard. So I'd want to go ahead and get it melted. Chocolate doesn't like to be put in something too warm, so what I would probably do is I would melt it first. I wait till this cooled down to about the same temperature as the chocolate, and then bring them together. So if this is about 90 degrees, the chocolate's about 90 degrees, they'll go together very nicely. If I try to bring them together when this is boiling hot, the chocolate might separate, and it could cause some problems with appearance and flavor and that kind of thing. So it really depends on the product you're putting in. But a lot of flavors could be put in here, infused in here. Think about things like nutmeg. Add a little nutmeg, suddenly tastes like eggnog all of a sudden. Add a little bit of dark Myers rum in it, could taste really good. All kinds of things.
How many ounces of chocolate would you put into it?
I would probably start off with like this much, which we have here is about 24 ounces of crème anglaise. I would probably use maybe about a small handful of chocolate, maybe about 2 or 3 ounces of chocolate. That'd be enough. Then it gets pretty dark. It really depends on how much dark chocolate flavor you want.
Right.
If you just want a little bit, that's just fine. Now, you notice I pulled this off the flame for a little bit. I could tell it was getting a little warm, a little fast. Yesterday I got lumps, and that's because this particular burner really heats up the pan and heats it up rapidly. I like gas flames better, and I can control them better, but I'm working up here. So with an induction burner, it's just the bottom of the pot that gets piping hot, and I've got to watch that because it can cook the egg rather quickly. So I'm going to watch the consistency here. Like Brittany had mentioned, I'm looking for it to coat the back of the spoon, but not just coat it. I want it to coat it, and I want to be able to run my finger across the spoon, and I want to see that the liquid doesn't go down across my finger mark. I want to see that it holds its own shape on the back of my spoon. Ideally, that's what we would have. So I'm just waiting for this to thicken a little more. The temperature, if you are using a thermometer, the temperature usually is about at 160 degrees it starts to thicken. By 165 it starts to thicken a little more, and by 170 it starts to form lumps. So that's usually about the temperatures if you're testing with a thermometer. I rarely work with a thermometer on this. I usually go with the back of the spoon method. I see if it coats the back of the spoon correctly. But that's a typical method you'd use with all sauces, right? If you use bechamel, if you're making, well, bechamel can come out rather thick sometimes, but if you're making a proper finished sauce of any kind, it should coat the back of a spoon. It should have shine. It should have the right pourable consistency. And if it doesn't, then you just have to make adjustments. The difference here is we're not working with roux. We're working with egg yolks. And egg yolks are a little more sensitive. What happens if you slightly overcook bechamel? No big deal. Yeah, it gets thicker, right? Anything with roux will just get a little thicker. No big deal. With egg yolks, on the other hand, you can ruin it and you end up having to start all over again. So that's the part that makes this a fun project. Generally, if you're careful, you'll never have to redo your vanilla sauce ever. You'll never have to redo it, but it happens, you know. I would say the key at this stage right now is patience. A lot of people get a little over anxious. What they do is they crank up their fire, thinking, well, a little fire. A little fire is good, more will be better, right? Doesn't work that way with crème anglaise. You've got to be willing to stand there until it comes to the right temperature and take it easy. This is why the French are so proud of their food, because most people don't have the patience to make it well. And the French do. The French take the time. They love their food. They make their food a certain way and makes it superior to everybody else's food. But they really laugh at all of us when we can't make it, because they can. And all it comes down to a lot of the time is patience. That's a know-how, of course.
What temperature are we bringing the sauce up to?
Approximately 165. Approximately. If you're testing with a thermometer. From my testing with crème anglaise is that when it gets to 160, it starts to thicken. And then when it starts to get even, about the finished level, it's about 165. If you go over to 170, chances are you've got a curdled mixture. So it just takes a little time. It's getting there. But you can see it's still quite liquid. Now, do I dare bump it up a little bit? Or should I be more patient? I'll bump it one notch up to 3. You know, I'm not going to be too over anxious here. I don't want to end up with lumps. But what happens if you get lumps? What happens if it curdles? Is it all lost?
Start all over again.
You could start all over again.
Strain it.
If you've only got a few, you can strain it. We can get a chinois from downstairs, and we can run it through a chinois and get most of the lumps out. It's not uncommon, especially for beginners, to get a few lumps. It really happens all the time. But if it's just a few lumps, and it's just a little bit, that's okay. You'll still have a lot of usable sauce. If it gets really curdled and you get nothing, it looks like cheese, looks like curds and whey, then you know you're done. You have to go get some more ingredients and start over. It's just, then there's no bringing it back. You'll have more lumps than sauce. So after I'm done making this, as the recipe mentions, you're going to cool this. It even mentions here to strain it. And I generally like to cool this down over an ice bath and get it cooled down really quickly. This is like a very high protein mixture too. So high protein and sweetness, it's just designed for bacteria. You know, bacteria love this stuff.
The flies are very
Yeah, flies are really attractive for some reason.
It smells so good. I like it. Flies appreciate good cooking.
Pull it off the flame again.
Get some chopsticks. Where are we? Mr. Miyagi?
Basically a low.
Very low.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm done.
I'm starting to get, let me go over and get a wooden spoon. I'll test it with a wooden spoon as opposed to a rubber spatula.
We're going to want a very gentle flame, correct?
Very gentle, yeah. Right now it's really at a good state. It's coating pretty well. I'd like to see a little thicker. But I've also noticed a couple lumps. I've noticed a couple lumps showing up on the bottom of the pan. And part of the reason for that, as I say, this induction burner, it gets the bottom of the pan really, really hot. I don't know if you're familiar with induction, but what it does basically is microwave energy that goes and excites the metal, the molecules in the metal, and heats up just the pan. The surface itself isn't very hot at all. It's because it's not this that's heating up, it's the pan. And I saw a guy demonstrate one of these a long time